Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm Mel Stewart, joined by SwimSwam's head of production and the senior reporter on deck at all the swimming meets, Coleman Hodges. And joining us today is three-time Olympian, seven-time Olympic medalist, Aaron Peirsol.
Hello. Hey, everybody. Good to be here.
Are you the sexiest man in swimming?
No. No, that goes to, let's see, who does that go to? Grievers or Adrian or Jack Roach or
okay, that was that. So you've done your research. We told you what this podcast was going to be like.
That was
right.
a paid political announcement.
Right. This is a green screen, everybody.
Oh, yes.
No, a lot of you might not even, we got to you got to know who this is.
The great Jack Roach has joined us, surprise guest.
This is totally unplanned, by the way.
No, honestly, we were on our way back from the Home Depot about half an hour ago, and I was like, "You want to hop on the call?" So there's plenty to talk about, I'm sure.
Coach Roach, is Aaron Peirsol the coolest man in swimming?
It's hard to argue that he's not, right?
Right.
It's a very political, diplomatic answer. Thank you, Jack.
It's true, though.
Because I don't want a definitive yes either.
For me, I guess so much of that is just preference, but like someone who is always very aware of what's going on around them and living in the present moment, which is where special things happen. He does such a good job of that.
It does. So I have to say this. I came back to swimming after a long break, and when I came back, one of the first Olympic brothers that I talked to was Piersol, and he was my knowledge was lean, and I was kind of swimming green.
Yeah.
And Aaron was very patient and was very kind, and I felt like I got my swimming legs back very quickly because of you.
Oh, thank you, Mel. Well, shoot, man. I mean, we remember very well. I remember very well when SwimSwam kind of first came on, but just when you came back in, and well, I think I've told you this, Mel. Like, I was 9 years old when I watched my first Olympics in Barcelona, and it's how it always moves forward in that way. And I'll never forget watching a guy swim butterfly breathing to his side. And being like, that's weird. And and I always loved it. It's like this iconic thing. You want to get stuck in someone's head immediately, breathe butterfly to your side, 9-year-old kid.
All right, well, I got to take this back to Austin, Texas, since I have two Austinites here. We moved to Austin. SwimSwam is based in Austin. I moved here in 2009 with my family, and I talked to you, and I talked to Jack, and basically it was a resounding yes. If you're not moving, you're an idiot. You need to do this. But what really stuck in my head was not you, Aaron. It was Jack. Jack said, I got a place in Driftwood. Is it Driftwood or Dripping Springs?
Dripping Springs.
Dripping Springs. And you said running those hills in Dripping Springs with my dogs. You said that was your happy place. And, but that really stuck with me, the way you talked about Austin, Texas. So the question is, I thought for sure that Aaron would be based in Austin. And that's part of the reason why I lived here. And that Jack would eventually be based in Austin. But now you guys aren't here. Why not?
There's too much cool going on with you there, Mel. I miss that town a lot. Completely. I know Jack does too.
I do.
I mean, and when Jack's talking about like getting out of the trails and running in Austin, I didn't pick that up until I was done with the sport. Kind of when I think you were kind of getting there, and all of a sudden I started kind of opening up a whole other world to me with regards to that. And so anyway, yeah, you guys are in as lovely a place as there is in the entire country, place that I've been.
Did you keep your place here?
No, I mean, I sold it as soon as I left, which was like 2012. And shoot, you know, but at the same time, like I had lived there for 10 years. I was there for 10 years. And the only thing that drew me out away was the ocean. That was it. And that's it. You know, if I had that nearby, I would have been in heaven. That's only by the nature of where I came from. And we had some hot summers there when I first moved there, or not first moved, but when I was the last few years. And that just about like nailed me into that decision to come out. So
it's hard to pull people away from Southern California, but I would say for the uninitiated, you need to know this about Aaron. Aaron is a design. He's not just cool. He's got this sense of design and taste that is you see with your style. You see the way you dress, the way you look, the way you grow your beard and grow your hair. But your house in Austin was a really cool place. It was a really cool place, tin roof, backed up to the creek. Which creek was it?
Yeah, Shoal Creek, and it was awesome. I mean, shoot, man, the coolest little place. It was on an acre, and it was like near town, you know, and it was this unique little spot. It was my dogs ran around wild, and it was just like, yeah, this is a lovely little area, cool little neighborhood.
Keep this up. It's good to see you guys.
We'll bring him back.
Wait. The question is, Jack, do you still have your place in Dripping Springs?
I do not own any property in Austin or areas around.
So Jack, what, you know, when you were in Austin, what made it so magical for you?
Gosh, you know, I moved there from South Florida in 1990, and I had never spent any time in Texas, and I don't think that I'm able to articulate the feel that it had. It started with all of the pride that you saw the people of Austin have in Texas itself by the Texas flags were flying everywhere, the state flags. And then I am a very avid runner, and I found the Greenbelt very early on and Town Lake. I owned a home in Hyde Park, which was about a mile from UT, and I could ride my bike to work or jog to work. And I guess you can talk about all of that, but you can't escape how wonderful the people are. It just, the energy you feel from the youth there and from people who have been there a long time, and the deep appreciation they have for it and the way they took care of Austin. It just, you know, it just dotted all the T or dotted all the.
Yeah, culturally speaking, it's rich little place.
Yeah.
I loved it.
We're going to dive into the swim nerd stuff. And Jack, if you're listening and you hear us miss something, you just jump in and go, you got that all wrong. This is
he's our resident expert.
I was going to surprise Coleman on Friday with Aaron walking in. So I probably omitted my use for you all at this point.
Yeah.
Good to
Thank
see
you, Jack Roach.
Kick it off, Coleman.
Yeah, so
that was fine.
Hey, you'll appreciate this guy.
Yeah, look at this.
This is Hobie.
Oh, wow.
Hobie's 10 months old.
And all of it too. Hi, Hobie. You wanna join us?
And I think Aaron's going to steal him when he leaves.
Shoot, man. This is the best dog. Yeah, best dog in the world. So, yeah, guys. Well, there you go. That's part of what I've got going on the last 2 months.
So let's kind of tie that to the swim nerd thing. So, you know, like Mel said, it's like you can't get California people out of California. It's infuriating, to be honest. And so what, you know, how did you not, being a Southern Cal guy, how did you not end up at a California school and end up with Eddie in Texas?
Good question. I was eager to try something new. So get out of Southern California. And so I wasn't looking seriously at any school in Southern California. I was looking in Northern California, but you know, there's a thing of I'll remember this well. I was actually, it was like a coin toss between Cal and Texas at the time, and everybody on the Cal team I knew, which is like, you'd think like, okay, that's like, sounds nice and cool and comfortable. And I remember thinking like, and the Texas guys, I really didn't know. Like, I didn't grow up with these guys. I didn't swim against them in any kind of like regional meets. They all swam against each other, a lot of them. But they were cool. They were a really cool group of dudes. And something about it was like this feeling of like shaking things up tremendously by like just completely shifting over into a new world. And something about college, the essence of it being the point of shaking things up. You know, I feel like, yeah, I mean, I love Berkeley. So, but to pull myself out and to kind of do something so different, it just seemed, I didn't think before I was looking that I would end up pulling that card, but that's just it. Like, what an amazing thing to reflect on, because that one decision basically afforded like a third of my life in a town I didn't really know much, like 10 years of my life, just because I decided to go to the University of Texas. 10 years of my life in Austin. So, you know, that's pretty awesome to think about. And, you know, to think that I'm part Texan now is, I got to be careful who I tell that to, but it's true. So I'm happy about it. I have so many, I mean, shoot, man. I have so many friends there and people, and shoot.
There's a rumor that you never have to work again for the rest of your life because you're an early investor in the Alamo Draft House. True.
Oh, well, false. I will have to work, you know. That's funny. But I am part owner in an Alamo. Yeah, I know. Pumped. Like, it was like one of those things where that's one of my favorite establishments in the world. And I don't know, for a lot of, I guess, people who are watching this, it's like the first place really that you could grab a meal and watch a movie, and a good meal. And it was there, and that's one thing, but the eclecticness of it, like the place is so weird, and loved it. I wish I'd seen movies outside of the Draft House is kind of not the same after leaving Austin in that sense. But yeah, that's funny, Mel, actually. Yeah, the one on Slaughter out in so down south is actually yeah. I was offered to be brought in on it, and I was like, really? That's a, you know. No, that did not like solidify my retirement for the rest of my life.
Well, I just want to get this straight. The one that's like less than a mile from my house is part on it. So can I get like my Aaron Peirsol card? Because I'm literally there like 4 nights a week before the COVID shutdown. 4 nights a week, I could just flash my Aaron Peirsol card. Aaron Peirsol.
I need to actually, and that's just it. I'm well overdue for a trip to Austin. I need to kind of get my Draft House fix anyway. I need to come in and do that. But I know it's like, I'm with you, Mel. Just on any random day, and I love going to the theater by myself. So just showing up to one of those places and like, you know, what did you do in this afternoon? Like, not telling you. You know, I'm going to the movie, and I love that. So anyway, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I'm due. It's been about 1.5 years since I've been there.
So we'll push off and just say Aaron Peirsol, entrepreneur, still has to work, but is still in a good position. Coleman, do you want to bring us back to NC2A swimming? Do you have some and get it
so
nerded up?
so when I was coming up in swimming, you know, the quadruple of you, Hansen, Crocker, and any fourth guy you wanted to put on any relay period on the end was legendary. And you know, from your perspective, was there one of the times when the three of you teamed up with a fourth random dude that really stuck out in your mind? Or, you know, were you guys just walking around like, yeah, we're unbeatable, we're the hottest stuff since sliced bread? And like, you know, when the three of us swim on our relay, it's pretty much already finished before it started.
Yeah. Interesting question. That's cool. Yes. So, for, you know, yes, we had freestylers that were really good on our team. Not even guys that were like on our college team, but post grads like Neil Walker and guys who were on a national team, some of the best swimmers in the world at the time. But yeah, we put him together for college, and yeah, I'll give a shout out to like my old college buddy, Chris Kemp, and, you know, him closing off our relay in college and which was fantastic. Those were always, relays are a blast. And for me, speaking to that end, since it was me and since I got to swim with Brendan and Ian along with these relays, it was just like, yeah, it was just kind of, we were allowed to put our attention on like what the potentiality of that race could be. So it was geared around trying to really extend it out, you know, and that started at the time, how fast we could go, right? And that extended into our international meets with Lezak and whoever else. But yeah, great question. But yeah, I would say Chris Kemp sticks out. And I you know, and then what's great about me bringing up Chris is just because he wasn't on the national team. He was a damn good swimmer, but and is. So yeah, Chris, there you go. Yeah.
So I got a question for you. There's something that I didn't know, but it's that when you were recruited to Texas, you sort of had a plan, and your plan was, I'm going to swim college for a period of time,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm going to be focused on 50 meters and my professional career.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah, and it's so.
Well, it was a thought that it was at least a possibility.
And he was like, Eddie was okay with this.
Yes, yeah, Eddie and I had that conversation beforehand, very explicitly, and I just said, you know, listen, at some point, an opportunity may come knocking if I continue to do what I'm doing that will be really hard for me to turn down, and may not be that smart for me to turn down, and it would afford me 2 years to swim through college. And but the only time it would come around was during the Olympic year, after NC2As and before Athens, and so since I kept, you know, kind of on the steady trajectory, so to speak, I was able to at least make that decision, and you know, I didn't want to necessarily leave the college, you know, environment and that team, and I wasn't, because I was still staying with the team to train, but yeah, like I had become a professional swimmer. My emphasis after that was international meets, you know, not 25 yards anymore, which for me too was actually okay. Like I was not a yards guy. Like I really, what I was getting at the college level was this team environment and atmosphere, which I found invaluable, and a certain kind of brotherhood and camaraderie, which I think you'd be remiss to right. It's like swimmers are so fortunate to be able to get that. I mean, it's hard enough to find it just because it is such an individual sport, that college actually provides it in a way that international swimming could probably benefit from, really, right? And so you know, all the sense of team and camaraderie pales in comparison to what college is when you're on the international level. And there's a beauty in that you miss. But at the same time, I knew I was not a yard swimmer. Like it was helping me with that, but that's not where my career was going to go.
Yeah, you already had a silver medal from your first Olympic Games, and which is when you go to your first games and you medal, it's a huge deal. You're only 17. What's interesting is you did your collegiate time, you turned pro, and I don't know when you signed with Evan Morgenstein at PMG, but that period of time with Evan and his stable of athletes, that was a moment in time when swimming really became professionalized. And you were a part of that. So where were you in line? Like, who had he signed? How did that begin? Because at a certain point, like, he had the bulk of the stars in your stable.
Well, that's an interesting point, and it's something that, like, I've at least peripherally been acknowledging with regards to professional swimming, like, really being pushed by guys like you, Mel. Right? I mean, like, your generation kind of like coming up and like making this concerted push and getting pushback, and then but making headway, but still, like, it was never lost on us, like, what, the kind of effort you guys made. And then, it came around to a degree where I think all of a sudden this like pinnacle happened around 2004, where companies were showing an interest that had never really shown before. You're seeing some kind of potential in it, and for good reason. I mean, you had guys like Michael, like, and we were a good team. Like, we were really kind of consistent. We were young, but we were really consistent. A lot of the guys on our national team stuck around for a while. So, but it was new. All of a sudden, money was being put in like it hadn't been before. So part of it for me was timing. And then with Evan, well, I don't know. I had the potential of winning a few gold medals at the Olympic Games that summer. So by that nature, but I wasn't the only one. I was in a good position to kind of at least set myself up for something good. And a few people were, and our team did so well that summer that it set the stage. And I wondered if swimming has maintained that to that degree, right? And I've even wondered, like, like I want to, because I don't believe it has, and I because you want that kind of continuous forward momentum and interest and intrigue, and it's born from a culture and a sense of like stability within it, and those companies have to feel like they're going to get a return, and that's just the business side of it, I guess. So, but that being said, I was always curious and was never really sure of how to go about asking this, like whether like what the metrics are or would be for, like, say, how much one of us would get paid. Were we selling that many suits? Like, I was actually like wondering whether if that's like the actual metric.
Sounds like an investor in the Alamo Draft House.
but it makes me think about today's state of where swimming is professionally, and why I would like to see it, not necessarily take a step back, but keep moving forward in that sense. And guys like Evan are not around anymore. I mean, there are people like Evan, yes, around. There are agents and that kind of thing, but it's shifted. Like, things have shifted. The money that Nike was bringing in, I know, isn't around anymore. But there is that kind of thing around. That being said, what that brings is innovation. This is why I bring it up. And it allows people, like, that was a very innovative decade. Like, things were coming into the sport that were contentious, and people, not necessarily everybody was very happy with where it was going, but like companies were just throwing smart people at it, you know, and people who wanted to try new weird stuff. We had goggles with no straps and suits without strings and stuff like that, you know, stuff that had never come around before. And it's like small, weird stuff, but it's cool. And so, you know, yeah, I would like to see that kind of thing. And it allows for more people, make a representative share for the work they're putting in. I mean, it's just, that's age old thing that I grew up hearing from your generation, Mel, and that, you know, we try to pass along too. So
to add some context to this, this was a very rapid growth period.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting right into the meat of it.
No, it was a rapid growth. This is a really rapid growth period. And and really Evan Morgenstein was an innovator in that time. He had you, he had Brandon Hansen, he had Lezak, he had Rowdy Gaines, he had Janet Evans. That's just off the top of my head. But I think as when the athletes stood together in one agency with one person pushing hard behind them, I think that the totality of that was a lot of power. And you could say, hey, this is my value, pay me for my value. I mean, I know this from conversations with Evan. We also have Garrett Torres. So here's the thing. We're moving into a situation that's like that currently with the International Swimming League and with the Alliance, the union being headed up by Matt Biondi. But so they've moved into the market and they've disrupted a little bit. You're actually on the FINA Athlete Committee. I know that you're a voice there. You're just a voice of reason and representation. But I would like to know your thoughts on the current market right now. Okay. With ISL entered, in the FINA ISL world.
Sure. Well, let me like just touch on something you just mentioned, because I think there is an unsung kind of presence within what swimming had, and it was Evan, right? Like there's a gentleman that like was behind the scenes of a lot of this that kind of pushed forward what the potentiality for swimming, or for the professional aspect of what swimming is and could be. It was kind of, in some regards, a lot of his brainchild. Like he willed it, like just like, you know, one man, and great people around him. But I think it's worth noting. I've put his name towards the being inducted into the International Swimming Hall of Fame before, and I actually think it's appropriate. But so yeah, that's like actually something worth acknowledging, that it could take a presence, right? Like you need, and it takes a rallying group around something strong, a strong message. And Evan had that. Evan looked out for his athletes in a really important way. He educated us. And so it needs to continue. And so, yes, I'm involved. I'm an athlete representative on the FINA Athletes Committee. So I represent the U.S. and the athletes in general. And with the professional side of it, the ISL it's good. Like you need to shake it out. You need, like, FINA has always needed to be have their feet held to the fire for the last 40 years or more. And you know, I've been seeing a bit of an acknowledgement that like they can't fight the rising tide. You know, they understand that it's not just the U.S. per se anymore that is actually collectively rising, right? This is becoming more a global phenomenon. And the ISL, you know, speaking about the power and presence, but it's just, you know, and just the presence of that it becomes real by the nature of the backing behind it, just the sheer like volume of what they can do and put out and make it valid, and if they can make it interesting and intriguing. And I feel like that's always been the big thing with swimming, is how do you make it intriguing and interesting enough to, like, you know, the talk, as long as I've known it, has been how do you make swimming big outside of the Olympic spectrum. Like it's, hey, we do great the Olympic year. You know, we don't ever have to worry about that. It's how it's always the narrative, at least within that realm of it has always been, how do you take it outside and grow it beyond that? And so the ISL is an attempt at that. And it's I think it's important to you get behind it, and if the athletes have power when they have a collective voice, and when they are educated and are actually motivated enough to want to understand and learn this stuff. That's the other thing about a lot of us, that when we're athletes, we just want to put our head down and swim, and that's why we're there, and it's important, but it's also, it becomes it is a maturity in it by growing a certain kind of awareness of how you have your presence within this environment, and just what it means to take ownership of it, literally and figuratively, and not to be having somebody just telling you what to do, but to actually be the one to say, like, this is where I want to see it go. And we're all allowed to do that, every single one of us. And so that's where I'd like to see the sport continue to go, always. And it's the professional aspect of the sport. I think it leads to good things. So I think the ISL is, well, it's as strong as a push as we've ever seen. So,
well, we're down to 6 minutes, and we people are going to hate us if we don't talk a little bit of swimming. So, Coleman, you want to come in and nerd it up a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. What's that?
Yes. So,
oh yeah.
So we talked about how the last decade, the 2000s, was so innovative, and obviously the first thing you mentioned, goggles without straps and suits without strings, but the first thing that comes to my mind is the suits, right? 2008 and 2009. So how do you feel about suits? Because I know, like, Mel, for example, loves them. He thinks we need to bring them back. And and so what were your thoughts when they first came out, and maybe when they went away, what were you thinking?
Great question. They weren't, okay, let me try to sum it up. They weren't a problem, I'll say, for the 8 or 9 or 10 years before that. Like when they came around, like in 2000, it was like this beautiful, innovative thing. And for the longest time, suits were, people abided by those like cardinal rules. Like, you don't make them buoyant. And what is the other one? Like, whatever, the buoyancy is like, that's the, you don't, it's like a performance enhancing thing. You don't do that. We always knew that. And so there were suits that came around at the end of the decade, less about the suits, more about the regulation. They shouldn't have been allowed in. They were great for open water swimming, like let them, or whatever, maybe something else. Like, I mean that in the sense of, I think that's what some of these suits were for. And FINA allowed them in. A bit of the FINA being ill prepared to be able to fully understand the technology. They did not have the infrastructure in place to be able to like make a correct decision. And then when swimmers actually put them on and started swimming, and that they knew what was happening, FINA didn't know how to proceed, and there was no leadership. And so the easy answer is, like, you cross the line with these suits. You don't make a suit buoyant. Doesn't mean you need to take it back 25 years. And because by the nature of you doing that, you're also telling these companies that have put so much money and time and interest into this sport, but in a natural way, because they've been allowed to the last 10 years, they leave. And they left. And the sport really hasn't recovered since then because of that. I actually do believe that. I believe it's actually an indirect effect of the suits leaving. And so suits aren't bad. The innovation is good. The regulation of those things in our values and our ethics is very important. And there's a balance. I think there will always be a balance between technology and progression and what we're willing to accept. I mean, now we're allowed to wedge in backstroke, you know, and now we're allowed to not, you know, soon we'll be flip turning in breaststroke. I don't know. It's like, you know, but it's what we can accept collectively. And I believe the suits, I believe that was a reactionary decision from people who really don't understand the nature of it. We were all standing back just going like, you guys really don't know the nature of the sport. By that actually, and to that extent, those suits were really freaking illegal.
We're down to 2 minutes, but I would just have to ask you, was there with so many swims, so many moments of time, do you have one that is just it?
I have a few, fortunately. I've always said too, if you can have I'll say the world record that I hold now, I'm very proud of in the 200 backstroke, and my first world record when I was 18 years old, I'll never forget. It was just like, you know, my coach never cussed, and he cussed when I got out of the water because he was so happy and I was so happy, and it was just, but it actually felt good. That's what I mean. I finished and I was like, I can keep going forever.
We're going to have to bring you back on and talk with nothing but swimming. Thanks for joining us, Aaron Peirsol, and pulling up the behind, Coleman Hodges.
Jack Roach.
And Jack Roach. You're listening to the SwimSwam podcast.